Hey, it's Dr. Tyson. I've received some questions and I want to take some time to respond to those questions and hopefully add some value to your business experience and to you as a leader. So the first question that we got was, when starting a business, what should someone keep in mind? And the short answer is start with the end in mind and work your way back from there, right? I think that's a logical approach, and I kind of try to do things in a logical manner. So with that being said, starting from the end, I'm gonna give you a few questions that I think will help you shape your thinking around the end and working your way back, right? So the first question would be, what do you want the business to do for you or for your family, right? Is it a side hustle or do you want to create a global corporation, okay? They're two different things and they take two different levels of effort. And so you want to think about that. Another question is, what will be your exit strategy? How will the venture end, right? So important to think about how you want to end, right? Do you want to be merged into a larger corporation? Do you want to be acquired? Do you want to hold on to the company for and pass it on as inheritance to your family? How do you want this to end? And I would say, don't discount how important that is, right? Keeping and holding the idea of that strategic plan to how to get there, like that's so important, right? That's so important when you're thinking about starting a business, right? How do you want to end it, all right? You have to think about how you want this to end because it could be a time drain. It can totally overwhelm you if you don't think about it that way. Another question is, what will it mean to start the business, right? So this is kind of bringing you closer back to the present, right? What will it mean to start the business? In other words, would starting the business equate to less time with your family or for yourself, right? And I'm getting at the times we live in today, right? Where mental health, well-being, wellness is so very important. With so much going on, so much coming at us, trying to find a good work-life balance, a good quality of life is super important. Does starting a new business mean that you're gonna be taking away from that time and putting your mental health and well-being at jeopardy? Starting a business will impact your peace, right? Let's just get that clear. But how much do you want it to impact your peace, right? I guess that's the better question, okay? So definitely something you wanna think about there. The other thing I would say to think about from the end, kind of moving back from the future, moving back to the present, what type of jobs do you want to create? And more specifically, what type of culture do you want to create in your organization? Do you want to create a culture that is empowering employees, or do you want to have a more authoritarian type culture? And there's no wrong answer, I believe. It just kind of depends on where you are in the life cycle of a business, right? When you start, it's going to have to be authoritarian, right? The culture is because it's going to be you, maybe one or two employees. So what you say is going to kind of have to go, especially if you're the CEO, founder, or whatever. You don't want to create a business and have employees come in and counteract what you're doing. So it's very common to have, when you start a business, it'll be your way or the highway, right? That's not anything wrong. But you also want to give space for employees. You want to empower that and add something. When I say add something positive to the culture. So you want to encourage that, right? But from day one, it's going to probably have to be authoritarian, and it probably will evolve into something that it more empowers, uplifts, and gives employees the voice that you want to have in your business. So those are some of the things that I would think about when starting a business from the future and bringing it back to the present. And those are more management, strategic type questions. There's some questions around operations as well. Some of the questions that I would think about operationally would be, is the problem that the business is solving big enough to match your desired end game? In other words, if you want to create a global corporation, is the problem a global problem, right? It's going to be very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult to create a global corporation when the problem is a localized problem, right? It's a problem that's very familiar in your region, but outside of your region, it's not a problem at all, right? And somebody else might have figured out how to solve it, right? So matching the business problem with the desired end game is super, super important, right? You gotta think about that. Another thing along those same lines is the problem, another question you could think about, is the problem the business is solving one that customers are willing to pay for, right? So we just talked about aligning the business problem with the desired end game, right? Another sort of alignment strategy is to ensure that your customers are willing to pay for this problem, right? And you would also want to make sure that aligns with your end game, right? You get in a for-profit business to generate revenue, right? So that means you need customers. If customers aren't willing to pay for the solution or service that you're providing, and that may be fine. If they're not willing to pay for it at the rate that you want to get to, like if you wanted this to be a global corporation and not willing to pay for that solution at that rate, you probably got to rethink it. So if you have a local or regional problem, but your customers aren't willing to pay for it, you don't really have a business, right? And so you got to think about that. But here's another scenario. If you have a local problem and you have customers that are willing to pay, but they're not willing to pay premium, that's something you have to think about, right? If they're willing to pay run-of-the-mill or middle-of-the-road prices, is that enough to grow your business, right? Do you have to go a different route and stuff like that? Okay. Another thing I would suggest to think about, or question I would pose to you to think about if you're starting a business, how will you engage your customers and keep them interested in the business that you're offering, right? Super important. I'm all about innovativeness. Innovativeness is the ability of a company to develop new ideas, products, and services regularly and present them to the market. And that's driven by customer experience, employee experience. And so how will you engage your customers along their journey, right? From the point that they recognize that they have a need to the point that they're ready to consume the product or service or solve that problem and beyond, that's their customer journey. How do you engage them? How will they interface with your brand, your product, your service along that journey? Have to be able to answer that. And you also got to think about how do you keep them interested after they've purchased your product. And so that leads to another question. What will you want their experience to be along their purchasing journey, right? And so from the time that they have the idea or recognize that they need or need a solution to a problem that they have, the job that they're trying to get done, to the time that they have consumed that product or service, that's a journey that every customer, every person buying something has to go through that. And so what do you want that to be like? As they engage with your brand, as they engage with your product or service, what do you want that experience to be? And so very important that you consider that and ask yourself those type of questions. And then the last thing sort of operationally that I would think about or have you think about is how will you convert those customers into fans and advocates after they've received your product or service, right? How do you convert them, right? And the thing that I talk to founders and entrepreneurs about a lot is, all right, your business shouldn't be transactional, right? It has a transactional component, but it shouldn't be transactional. It should be relationship based, right? And so just like I talked about, that customer journey is a relationship. It's a time from the recognizing that they have a need to when that need is fulfilled. But that's not the end, right? It shouldn't be the end. That's just really the transaction. And so you want to create a space for customers to engage with you while they're trying to solve the problem that they have, once they have purchased or consumed your product or service, and then after, right? And so that's important. Definitely want to think about that in the customer experience aspect of things. The last thing I would think about is how I want to organize the business, right? The other questions, management, strategic, operational, they'll influence how you answer this question, right? They have future implications, but they influence the type of business formation you choose, right? So if you're thinking about the global corporation and you want to engage investors, it makes sense to establish your company as an S or C corporation. If you're not, and you just want to get this thing going, and it's not, let me be clear, you can always change, right? So meaning if you start off as an LLC, and an LLC is very easy to get created, and it's easy to manage for tax and other administrative purposes. And so if you're a single person venture just starting out and you want to get those business documents filed with the state, go ahead and do it. It's easy to do it. You can always change to an S corporation as you look to engage investors and take advantage of some of the benefits of being a S or C corporation, okay? That corporate veil thing. But talk to your accountant to help you figure that out. But those are some things I would think about if I was starting a business, and I hope this was helpful for you. See you next time.